We are going to begin the joint meeting of the Cotati City Council and the successor agency to the former Cotati Community Redevelopment Agency. Welcome, everybody. Can we begin with a roll call, please?
Councilmember Lemus,
Here.
Councilmember Harvey,
Here.
Vice Mayor Ford,
Here.
Mayor Sparks.
Here.
We'll show Councilmember Rivers as absent.
Right, thank you. We begin our city council meetings with a land acknowledgement followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. So I invite folks to stand and join us for those. The city of Cotati recognizes that we are on the ancestral lands of the coastal Miwok, who are the original caretakers of this area. We respectfully acknowledge the indigenous peoples who have been stewarding and maintaining a relationship on this land as knowledge keepers for millennia. This acknowledgement does not take the place of authentic relationships with indigenous communities, but serves as a gesture of respect to the land that we are on. Now, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you. Now we are going to approve the minutes from our last meeting on November 12th. Is there anybody on the council who has a correction to the minutes? Okay, seeing none of that, I will open it up for public comment. This is the time when people can make a comment if you have something to say about our minutes from our last meeting. Is there anyone in the chambers wishing to comment on the minutes? Okay, let's open it up to public comment on Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Sparks. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon if you would like to make a public comment on approval of the minutes. Mayor Sparks, that will end public comment.
Okay, thank you. I'd be looking for a motion.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that passed 4-0. Please bear with me while I read some announcements. Meeting orientation for new attendees and viewers. In conformance with the Brown Act and the adopted City Council rules, the meeting agenda includes items labeled as action items, where the opportunity to provide comments relevant to the item where the City Council may consider the item. Skipped a line. If the City Council considers the item, citizens will be afforded the opportunity to provide comments relevant to the item being discussed. The meeting agenda also includes a citizens business item, which is the designated place on the agenda where citizens have the right to say whatever they wish. However, the Brown Act prohibits the City Council from taking action or considering any item that is not on this agenda to ensure that other members of the community who wish to provide comment are notified in advance through a properly noticed meeting agenda. Measure S supports police services, a variety of recreation programs for all ages, and the maintenance of our streets, parks, and public buildings. See details on the web at cotaticity.org. Citizens interested in receiving City of Cotati community alerts via text or email are encouraged to enroll with Civic Ready by signing up on the city's website, www.cotaticity.org, under the How Do I link at the top of the homepage. Like always, we love to hear from you, so please feel free to contact the city at 707-792-4600 or info@cotaticity.org. If you have a non-emergency issue after normal business hours, you can contact us at 707-792-4611. And of course, if you have an emergency, please contact 911. Continue to look for updates on the city's website and social media channels available on Facebook, Instagram, and Civic Ready. All right, that will bring us to the approval of the final agenda. I am proposing that we move agenda item 11A to right now after this approval of the final agenda before we do any of the other items. Are there any other suggested changes to the agenda?
No other proposed changes, Mayor.
Okay, since we're proposing to take action to change the order of the items, if there's anyone who wants to comment on reordering the number of the items, they can come forward now. Can we open it to Zoom, please?
Thank you, Mayor Sparks. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon if you'd like to make a public comment on approval of the final agenda. Mayor Sparks, that'll end public comment.
Okay, thank you. We're just approving the agenda order right now. Not yet. A little bit early. Okay, so we will go ahead and move on. Oh, are there any objections to this change? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on to item 11A, which is recognition of Walgreens and Grayson Chu, recipient of the Employers Best Practices Award and Employee Initiative Award for people with disabilities. Do we have a staff report? Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So we do have, just tonight, just so you know, we do have Grayson Chu and his family here in the audience. And I don't know if Candace White, I don't believe she was able to make it, who is the manager of Walgreens. But just to reiterate some of the background, on October 30th of this year, the local office of the State Department of Rehabilitation, in partnership with Becoming Independent, hosted an annual awards event. It's called the Mayor's Award Awards event, recognizing individuals that are employed, community advocated for individuals with disabilities. I think something's wrong with that English there. And employers who provide employment opportunities for individuals with disabilities. And so Mayor Sparks and other Sonoma County mayors were invited to that awards event. At the awards event, Cotati Walgreens, represented by store manager Candace White, was awarded the Employer Best Practice Award for being an excellent employer for people with all levels of disabilities. In addition, one of the employees at our local Walgreens, Grayson Chu, was also recognized with the Employee Initiative Award. And attached to the staff report is the nomination that was sent in for the Cotati Walgreens. So you can see, I won't reiterate that, but you can see for yourself all the reasons why they were nominated and presented these awards. And I will also remind, I guess, everyone in the room that on our October 8th meeting, the City Council also recognized October as National Disability Employment Awareness Month. So that's the tie-in, I think, with the October awards ceremony. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions if the council has any.
Anybody have any questions? So I just wanted to say I attended the awards ceremony and it was so fantastic to see all the wonderful things that were going on, and the program at Walgreens is just such a positive thing in our community. So I really wanted folks to be able to know about that, and I invited Grayson and his family to come, and we just want to recognize and honor you because we're proud to have you as part of our community. So I know that Grayson had a few words prepared to say. If you want to come up to the podium and say that now. Yeah.
So I have learned a lot while working at Walgreens, such as how to provide customer service and how to get along with coworkers. I've picked up some skills like learning how to stock and face items and how to process photos. And I'm grateful to Candace at Walgreens for supporting me, and also to Sandra Aguayo from the Department of Rehabilitation for connecting me with Candace.
All right. Thank you. And would you mind coming up and we can get a picture together with you and our photographer, Mr. Obich? Take a photo.
Yes. It's okay. That's all right.
Right here?
It's the front, because otherwise this is in the way.
Okay.
All right.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
All right. So that is going to,
I'm sorry, before we leave that item,
Yes.
I forgot to mention in my report that there is actually an action on here to authorize the mayor to send a letter, as a letter to both Grayson and also Walgreens, congratulating and recognizing them for their awards. So
Okay, thank you. Yes, should
it.
we open it for public comment since it's an action?
Yeah.
All right, is there anyone in the room wishing to make a public comment on this item? Okay, not seeing anybody, we'll open it for Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Sparks. Once again, speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment on this item. Mayor Sparks, that'll end public comment.
All right, thank you.
I move that we authorize the mayor to send a congratulatory letter to Walgreens and Mr. Tu.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of authorizing me to send a letter of congratulations, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. And thank you again for being here. All right, that is going to bring us to item 8, which is citizens' business and public comment for consent calendar items. I have received a notification from someone on the council that they're planning to ask for item 9A to be pulled from the consent calendar. So if you're wanting to speak on item 9A, we could do the comment after. Does that work? When we do that agenda item? So with that said, citizens' business and public comment for consent calendar items. Any member of the public wishing to speak to the council on any items listed on the consent calendar or any matters not listed on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the council is not allowed to consider issues or take action on any item not listed on this agenda. Pursuant to the City Council Policy 2023-01, comments of any member of the public are normally restricted to a total of 3 minutes in length per person for matters not on the agenda and a total of 3 minutes per person in length for any and all items on the consent calendar. The mayor may extend the time limit for a reasonable time where a disability accommodation has been requested. To facilitate public comment, the deputy clerk will alert speakers when there are 30 seconds remaining. Okay, so I do have a citizens business comment card from Lorianne Barber.
Hi, good evening, Council. I'm Lorianne Barber from here in Cotati, and I'm just here today because I want to publicly thank the citizens of Cotati for voting yes on Measure S, so that we have now repealed the ban that we had on roundabouts. And I want to also thank many citizens who helped get that measure on the ballot and worked diligently to get it passed. I'm not going to name them because I would forget somebody and that would be terrible, but there were many people who stepped up to really help this happen. And I also want to thank Kevin Patterson in his role as Deputy City Clerk in the support that he gave to the initiative going forward. So anyway, thanks, everybody. That's what I came to say.
All right, thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else in the chambers wishing to make a citizens business comment? Right, can we open it to Zoom, please? Oh. Are you wishing to? I think you could speak about it now if you want to, but it's going to be pulled and we will have an opportunity to do that. Yeah. Yes, Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Sparks. Speaking to our Zoom attendees once again, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment for citizens business. Seeing no hands, Mayor Sparks, that'll end public comment. Thank you.
Okay, and from consent.
Yes, I'd like to pull 9A.
Okay, so I'd be looking for a motion to approve item 9B.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve just consent calendar item 9B. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so item 9B is approved unanimously. And we will, sorry, go ahead. We are going to move 9A to right after item 10. So in like 30 seconds from now. Okay, sorry for the confusion, folks. Okay, so now that takes us to direction on future agenda items. Does anyone have an item they wish to be placed on a future agenda? Okay, then we are going to move right on to item 9A. And I will turn it over to Mr. Scott for a staff report.
So, Mayor, members of the council, Craig Scott, Public Works Director, City Engineer. I'll just give a brief presentation about this item. It's a priority for the city to repair and replace its Class 1 pathways. Class 1 pathways are pathways that are separated from roadway for bikes and pedestrians, and we've got proudly a lot of those in the city. And this project, this design proposal would be to design repair and maintenance of the pathway section of Laguna Pathway from Gravenstein Way to East Cotati Avenue. The budget would probably support maybe a third of that length, but we would need to see what the cost estimate would be coming out of the design. The existing pathway is asphalt, and it's cracked and has inundations in it. It's just not level anymore. I think it very minimal has been done since it was installed. So the consultant has proposed to replace, do a design evaluating the existing condition and having the treatment method match the condition. So if it's in really poor condition, it would maybe be reconstructed. If it was in fairly good condition, it'd be maybe something like a slurry seal, like you see on streets. We have seen the responses to this item, and staff asked the consultant, Mo Engineering, if they could design an alternative and include that alternative in the bid documents. And so then once the bids come in, we would have the base bid, which would be replacing the asphalt in kind or repairing it to continue to be an asphalt pathway. And the alternative would consider a more natural pathway, similar, an example of which, but this wouldn't be necessarily what we do, but from Pocket Park to Ladybug Park, there's a more natural pathway section. There's that. There's maybe decomposed granite. There's other permeable sections that we could consider. I don't have a lot of information on what those alternatives are at this point, but we would know more as the design progresses. So we're willing to incorporate that into the project. It does not change the price. I was told if we request that to be included at the very beginning of the design, and there's no change to the price. What hurts designs is when you get to the very end and then you're thrown some new requirement and all of the design drawings need to be redone. But if it's done at the very beginning, the cost impact, they would honor the costs that we have before us. That's about all I had. I'd like to respond to any questions.
Thank you. Do folks have any questions? Yes. Go ahead.
I got a few. So just to be clear, there's no difference in this. What we're doing today is a design contract. That doesn't imply there won't be a difference in cost for the alternate versus the asphalt when actual construction bids come in.
That'll be a decision point at that time.
Okay.
We'll be able to compare the two and make a decision.
And one other question about a material you didn't mention is the one we've used on several of the other pathways around the DG with a binder, like across the street here. Do you have any idea how that has played out in terms of price comparisons with asphalt? Those are all new construction, so it's not directly comparable, but.
Well, I did a rough calculation on the sidewalk gap closure project, which much of that is the binder decomposed granite. And that's coming in at about $600 a foot. And paving jobs, we're looking at maybe $175 a foot. I'm not doing square footage. It's just in linear feet if you take an average 5-foot width of the sidewalk. So if that were to play out, it would be potentially considerably higher. But I really don't, that's just back of the envelope calculations.
Okay, thanks. Question?
Yes, good.
And my understanding was what we originally were proposing is really just a maintenance project to make it up to speed like we do on our roads to bring it back to its better condition. What has been suggested, it's my understanding that it would have to start back from ground zero, if you will. If we were to do something different, we'd have to take up all the asphalt and kind of start from scratch again. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, the existing material would have to be removed and then built back up again with natural materials or the natural pathway.
Okay.
Whereas the prior, the plan, as you're correct in that it would be more similar to a street paving preservation job where you already have the street. And so it's doing crack seal, very much cheaper methods, slurry seal. And then there's certain areas that are alligator cracked and you could tell that they're really damaged. Those would be specifically dug out, and that would be the similar treatment for segments of the pathway that you really see are bumpy and cracked. Those segments would get that special treatment, which would be to remove quite a bit of it and then re-pour it. But then there's sections of the path that would just need a top coat.
And so we've asked, as I understand from your report, we've asked them to do both aspects of it. One, just what it would take to bring it back to its proper condition, and one to replace it with another material.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And did I hear you right that you could ask them to price out the decomposed granite as well as the more simple dirt and gravel like what we have between Pocket and Ladybug? Or would they be just kind of picking one of those to go forward with the design?
How many alternatives would they look at? That's a good question. I mean, the two standards we use are the DG with binder and the natural pathway and the other parts of the Laguna Trail. So I think we would look at both of those as potential options. We'd have to make sure that whatever we do meets whatever accessibility standards we need to meet. And that may end up driving the material in the end, but I think we would look at both of those standards. We wouldn't be looking at standards outside of that because those are the two.
Yeah, because it seems like the more natural pathway might come in substantially cheaper than the decomposed granite. So, yeah, okay. All right. We're going to open it up to public comment. So anyone who wants to speak on this right now, you're welcome to.
Just wanted to know if that included the Helen Putnam pathways that are going to go in.
So
this is just the existing one that's already there.
I think, yeah, in order to address you, we need you to come up and speak so people on Zoom can hear what you're asking because the mics won't pick you up. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
My name's Beverly Paulson, and I was just curious if this included the Helen Putnam new pathway that's going to be going in through the park, or if this is just the existing pathway that's already there leading to Ladybug.
We will take that question down and we'll allow all the public comment to happen, and then we'll ask the director to address it.
Okay.
Okay. I do have a comment card from Jenny Blaker. If you want to come up next.
Thank you. I did send an email with photographs. I hope you could see the photos okay. I was trying to highlight the differences between asphalt, which over time ends up buckling and cracking with fissures, sometimes wide enough for a bike tire to get stuck in, bumps, roots sticking up. I've heard now of 3 people who've fallen on the asphalt paths. versus the stretch from the stretch going up to Ladybug Park that I think is like compacted earth with gravel. I'm not sure what that surface is called, which I don't think has been resurfaced for 20 years, and it's still doing pretty well. There's a few low spots that maybe could be filled with some gravel, but there aren't all those cracks and fissures and bumps and roots sticking up despite the trees and despite the heavy rain recently and things like that. I've also noticed that the decomposed granite with binder that's gone in recently isn't holding up very well in a few places. It's already cracking after, I think, a year or two. So I understand that there would be a problem if we'd have to take up all the asphalt and start again, but it seems like over time that hardened, compacted earth is the thing that actually holds up the best. And so far, everyone I've spoken to prefers that more natural look rather than asphalt. And I believe it should surely be cheaper than asphalt in the long run as well. So anyway, I hope you had a chance to look at the photos. I was just trying to highlight the differences between those surfaces. And thank you very much for considering it already and taking it off the consent calendar. And also thank you for the move to have the city install trash bins that can be serviced by Recology. That's great. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for your comment. Yes, you're welcome to come up.
Yes, I'm Esther Tribble, and I go to Helen Putnam Park almost every day. And I also walk that trail across the creek of the hardened earth. And I think that would probably be the best because I've seen some problems with the decomposed granite, which I really like too. But I can't imagine having an asphalt trail in that natural area when we're trying to be, ecocentric or eco whatever. And so for somebody who goes there every day, we've already lost half our park to the ballpark. And so I'd really like to have it as natural as possible. And if, I grew up in the country, and so if you have a path, when the trees go by and the tree roots come up, the thing just, it kind of resets itself. It just seems like that would be the cheapest and most attractive from my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, you're welcome to come up.
Yes, good evening, Council. Neil Hancock. I think it's good to hear the staff look at the broader perspective and bring that back. I think the bit that I see that's missing slightly, Mow Engineering will do this analysis, but there are some parts of that path, Gravenstein to East Katati Avenue, that have a lot of trees around them. Very, very nice. And that's the area that I think is really impacted by these routes that are changing things. And, it's just amazing the way asphalt doesn't give. So I think it's talking about a self-healing surface of some sort for the future. And if those areas need change, then Mow Engineering can identify them. And I would hope bring them back in a report of some sort for basically a discussion. So I eyeballed it on the map, and it seems like only about a third of that path is really covered by the trees, or it has a lot of tree root influence. One of it is less than 20 years old, which was done by the bridge, for the bridge behind our house and stuff. So I think that's the request really is that once Mow Engineering have done this or have got to a point in the analysis, I don't know whether that's at the 60% phase that it makes most sense, or that they complete the whole thing with 2 options that then come back to the council, but some way of giving some insight early in the process. And as was said, if it's early on, it's fairly easy to change things. If it comes right to the end, all there is the stamp of approval that can really be given. So thank you very much. I would also like to say it's fantastic to see the East School Street path going in. That is really nice, the way that's going through the trees, and we'll complete that walking section from City Hall to the school. I think that's very nice to see that. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else in the chambers wishing to come up? You're welcome to join us up here.
Hello, I'm Marla Charbonneau. I've lived in Cotati for decades, and most recently, in the last several years, I've been walking daily on the Laguna Path, and just so appreciate from Pocket Park in both directions the natural beauty there. And I notice when I cross East Cotati and I'm on the asphalt, how different it feels. And I understand the issue is more complicated now that there's already asphalt there, but I hope that we take the long view looking forward and really think about how well that path has held up in both directions from Pocket Park. I've seen it flood over and over again, and within a day, it's fine. It just bounces right back. It drains really well. And it's just the natural beauty, the coolness compared to walking on asphalt. It's just far superior. And maybe in the short run, it might be a little cheaper to just put asphalt back over asphalt. But I think in the long run, we're really going to do better in every respect if we consider something more natural. Thank you.
Great, thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else in the chambers wishing to make a comment? Yes. Welcome.
Good evening. Shelley Berman, Cotati resident. Today on the morning on the walk, I don't know which walk it was, but there's already a pothole in the decomposed granite. There's also a fencing down. It's from a street to McGinnis. You know, from East Cotati, what's that street that cuts through McGinnis? You know which one I mean? So there's a pothole there already. There's a lot of cracks. I'm not a fan of that, and I think it costs a lot, and I don't think that it holds up. So I don't know what to do. I'm glad it's not me and it's you. Ha. And I'm concerned about wheels and folks with walkers and wheelchairs on even this natural path. And I don't know I've never seen a wheelchair along there. I have seen wheelchairs on the asphalt. I have seen people with walkers on the asphalt. Scooters and bicycles and strollers. It's very well loved, well used path that has the asphalt surface, and we need to consider that wheels can move easily. So that's my concern looking at disability, and thank you also for acknowledging disability today. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else in the chambers wishing to make a public comment? All right, let's open it up to Zoom, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor Sparks. Once again, speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment on this item. Mayor Sparks, that'll end public comment.
All right, thank you. So I will go ahead and bring this back to the council for discussion. Yes, go ahead.
It's my understanding from this item that it is for the part that's from Laguna Santa Rosa Trail between Gravenstein Way and East Cotati Avenue. That's the only thing we're discussing for this design, correct?
Correct.
Okay, because there was some comments made about Helen Putnam Park, which is a whole different project. So to be clear, so everyone knows that the path we're talking about is the one off of East Cotati Avenue. We'll get to the other path when we get there, but just wanted to be clear about that.
Thank you. And there was another question maybe Mr. Obid or Mr. Scott could address about if we go forward with this design agreement, will there be a chance before the design is completed for us to consider the alternatives? Or would they, how could this work mechanically so that we can have some input before the whole design gets done?
Well, I mean, I think my suggestion would be that the three possible materials that we could talk about are repairing the asphalt, a continuation of the natural type materials that's on the other side of, between Ladybug and East Cotati or McGinnis Bridge, or decomposed granite. There's only three options we'd be talking about. So I think, I mean, I would just recommend that we just move forward with looking at all three, making sure it meets the criteria that we heard tonight, as well as, you know, the council's direction. And we can just put it out to bid and come back with the prices for all three, and then we can have a conversation about the pros and cons of all three materials.
And can we ensure that when they look at that, that they consider different kinds of mobility on it, different kinds of wheels and walking and strollers and the whole 9 yards, so that we're not just looking at one aspect or the not?
Yeah, I think if one of the materials, one of these three, doesn't meet ADA in some way, it would probably just be dropped, and we'd have to describe why, you know.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask Mr. Scott one other question, which is, so this might look not good for a while, but if there are sections that actually have to be cut out and replaced, is it a possibility, or could they consider the possibility in the design that the cutout sections would be replaced by a different material? So rather than what I think would put the project off for years option of saying, we're going to remove all the asphalt and start from scratch just for budget reasons. If we're going to be cutting out some sections, like I agree, there are some sections, I ride that on my bike and it's actually very difficult to ride on my bike right now. And there are some sections that I don't think are going to be solved with an overlay. So is that a possibility? You cut out a section and replace that section with, say, the DG? I know it would, the joints would look not good.
So that would be a patchwork. If we could string some together to make it like a continuous section, maybe would be better. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said before, this is the first time we've come back to maintain the pathway, so there's no guarantee how long that patchwork would stay that way.
I do think, though, that when we get bids back, if we have the budget to do whatever alternative we choose, then it's an easy decision. But it could also be a conversation about not only the material that we choose, but do we want to put more money into the project if the bid's higher than what the cost is, or are we going to scale back the project a little bit, and what would that look like? And that's maybe to your point, Councilmember Ford. You know, if we had to scale it back to meet the budget, how would we, you know, would we focus on certain areas?
Like if there was one segment, for example, that was in pretty good condition and another segment that was in terrible condition, we could talk about just doing a slurry seal on the part that's good and replace the really bad part with a different material or something like that. We could have a conversation about is that the kind of thing you're thinking of?
Yeah, I think something like that could be part of the conversation.
So we could consider phasing it based upon what we get back in bids. We could, you know, maybe say this third is, you know, going to be okay, but this 2/3 we kind of need to do later, and maybe another third later, depending upon what the cost is. I don't know how,
Sorry.
how much it's going to be.
But
So
yeah, but I think it's going to be a conversation. What material do we want to go with?
Right.
And then based on that material choice, do we have the financial resources to do the whole thing based on the bid amount of that material, or do we want to break it into pieces?
Okay.
And phase it like you're saying.
Okay, thank you. No, yeah, I think it's also important to look at some designs that include more natural state. And I know it's too early, but I think it'd be good to kind of look at some kind of grants or something that would help with restoring back to natural thing. I know it's not time right now because the design's not even done yet. But once we get there, I think it'd be good to try to see if we can find something like that.
All right. Any other discussion or comment? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm pretty torn about this one and about kind of what direction I would prefer. This segment of the path is significantly different in purpose to me than the section south of East Cotati Avenue. So I commute by bike regularly, and I ride my bike all over town for purposes of getting to stores and things like that. And the segment south of East Cotati Avenue is not necessary to get anywhere. It's a nice pretty place to go, and I walk there a lot. I never ride my bike there. I'll just go out on the street that parallels because it's a lot more pleasant to ride the surface. I don't have a mountain bike or gravel bike. So whereas the section north of East Cotati Avenue for me is an important part of the bicycle transportation network. It's in our active transportation plan. It is the only decent way to bike from downtown to up into Rohnert Park. Like otherwise you're on Old Red, which is awful to bike on. You're on Commerce. You're trying to weave your way through that not fun place to bike. So I spent some time today looking at California Department of Transportation standards for what are called Class 1 bike paths. They are paved. It will not be a Class 1 bike path if we go back to dirt. And I love the path, and I walk it regularly from McGinnis down to Pocket Park and all the way to Ladybug. But it serves a very different purpose and function to me. All the speakers tonight talked about how important that path north of East Cotati is as a walking path. Very few. When I've been out there, I've seen bikes on the asphalt portion, but I've very rarely seen bikes on the portion south of East Cotati. So that's my hesitation. I trying to balance that. Multi-use path in general means a hardscape that skinny wheels will work on. And so but I do recognize like the asphalt is a mess and tree roots make a mess of it. And I don't understand what it is about the path south of East Cotati that keeps it in good shape. Because when I hike in trails out in parks, there's plenty of roots that trip me on the trail. So I'm not clear what it is about this. Is it just that we don't have any big trees right along the path? I'm curious about that too. So I'm struggling with it. I would not at this time support de-hardscaping it to make it into a more, more like a walking path, almost exclusively walking and mountain biking path.
Thank you for bringing that up. Do we have to do anything if we were to go in that direction? Would we have to do anything to our active transportation plan if we kind of go backwards on something that we committed to keeping as Class 1? If this will kind of downgrade it to a different class, is there something that we need to do?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of what we would have to look at when we look at the different materials. So if the change in materials would knock it out of a Class 1 path, or which our plans clearly show that it's a Class 1 path, or, just like the ADA requirements, if ADA requirements knock it out, then that material just wouldn't be put forward ultimately in a final bid package.
Okay.
And we would explain why.
I think too, during the ATP presentations, there was an emphasis placed on the connectivity of Class 1 pathways. And when that was achieved, it would turn whole areas of the city this color. They depicted that differently on the maps, showing it was truly bike and pedestrian friendly. And because Cotati has disconnected pieces, we've got a lot of pathways, but we have these disconnected pieces. Our city wasn't depicted that way. But if we made those connections and they were truly Class 1 pathways, I suspect you get credit for it. And I'm not sure exactly what that gives us. Does that make us eligible for grants or just bragging rights? I don't know. But there is an implication to connecting these true pathways up. And if they were to lose status as a Class 1 pathway, it might not give us that, that benefit.
Yeah, because that pathway at Commerce crosses and connects to the Rohnert Park pathway.
I just wanted to say that also that the path near Pocket Park in each direction. I do frequently see a lot of children on bicycles. I know that Myrtle Road has a bike lane and it's, you know, if you're trying to get through there quickly, then that's probably the way you're going to ride from the whole neighborhood in Myrtle Park that like connects up to downtown through Myrtle. But I've noticed a lot of families don't feel comfortable having their kids out on Myrtle, so they tend to take the bikes on that path. And I have seen a lot of powered wheelchairs and mobility scooters using that path pretty often. So I know that there are wheeled and strollers, all the time strollers. So there are wheeled things going on that path successfully. I haven't seen a lot of high-speed road bikes for sure. But anyway, just wanted to throw that in there. Okay, so how do we want to move forward with this? Are we on board with the idea of having Mo Engineering look at all three possibilities?
Yeah, I think that staff kind of jumped that. We would have probably maybe suggested that be added, but it sounds like they've already considered that based upon the feedback that was received by the public. So I don't, unless we want to add anything else other than what we. No, meant. Okay.
Yeah, well, I think also the analysis of whether it affects our ATP status too and our pathway status, that would be good to know for us too.
So can I turn it back to you real quick? The motion, the resolution as it's written, are there any changes we need to make to that to capture the discussion that we've had?
Because it's not in the scope, I would say we'd put something about including an alternative.
Yeah, that's something we can work with the consultant on. It's just a motion to approve, just with the direction that we heard tonight to evaluate all three options.
So we're looking for a motion, just like as written, but including direction to evaluate all three options and how that will impact our active transportation plan. Those are the things I heard. Yeah. Okay. Does someone want to take a try at that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so make a motion to return to the Mo Construction, ask them to look at the additional plans and come to City Council with a bid. Was that the motion? Was there something in here? I didn't see a.
No, I think we're moving to approve a professional services contract at this stage.
Okay.
Because it's the contract at this stage. So is that,
Okay.
or should I?
Yeah, go
Should I
ahead.
go ahead with that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Why don't you go ahead with item 9A as written and just make a few little
Yeah.
changes to it? Yeah.
I move that we approve a professional service agreement with Mo Engineering, Inc. for engineering, design, and bidding assistance services for the Class 1 Pathways Maintenance Project with direction to consider alternative materials and our impact on our active transportation plan status. All right.
I'll second.
And does that include to authorize the city manager to execute said agreement? I'm just asking.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. I was reading it out of the subject, but you're right. I could read
Okay.
it out of the recommendation.
Okay.
Okay, so are you okay that your second applying to the whole? Okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so that passed unanimously, and I want to thank everybody who came out and who emailed us and helped us with this decision. So thank you very much.
Where are we?
Okay, that brings us to item 11B, which is a discussion of the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing Districts. I will turn it over to City Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So Enhanced Infrastructure Financing Districts, otherwise known as EIFDs. So it's just a financing mechanism. That's sort of a redevelopment 2.0, but I'll just touch on the history real quick. So in 2011, as many of us recall, the state was faced with a dire budget situation, and a lot of that budget, or part of that budget situation that they were struggling to meet their obligations on was educational funding, which is a significant part of their general fund. Prop 13 redirects a lot of local property tax to fund education, but the state general fund also is a significant funder of education statewide. So as part of the solution to that problem, they dissolved redevelopment agencies back in 2012 and basically redirected a lot of that money back to schools. So that solved the state's budget problem, but created a huge problem for a lot of cities. So, and this has been the history of, I guess, the state and cities since 1979. It's been a back and forth thing. So the legislators realizing, the issue that they caused for over like 400 cities, which is most of the cities in California, they proposed some legislation, ABX 1. I'm sorry, that was they proposed some legislation in 2014, so a couple years later, to create something called Enhanced Infrastructure Financing Districts as sort of a response to the dissolution of redevelopment. And an Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District is basically a type of special financing district that uses a portion of property tax increment. There's I'll talk about it in more detail, but there's a chart on the screen there, which is also in the staff report. But it uses a portion of property tax increment revenues generated by community growth for a specifically defined area to finance public infrastructure and economic development projects. And EFIDs don't actually impose any new taxes or fees on anybody, including the property owners that are in the district if a district gets created. It just basically takes, as you can see in that chart, that just is a really simplified chart of property tax growth over time. So if that first vertical bar on the left side of the screen there, that is in the hypothetical EIFD creation. And then it starts, then you start seeing tax increment, which is the lighter blue inset triangle on the bigger blue triangle. So as over time, as you go on that chart to the right, you see the overall property tax growth and the increment portion of it, which is the light blue triangle. At some point, you reach that second vertical bar, which is when the EFID would dissolve, and then the full property tax goes back to the taxing entities. That's what they mean by tax increment. So it's the incremental growth in tax over time. And this chart, the simplified chart, just basically shows 100% increment, but that's probably not what we'd be talking about with an EIFD. And so EFIDs are prohibited from using increments from educational agencies such as the Cotati-Rohnert Park Unified School Districts. That's why we're not talking about them. And we're only talking about the County of Sonoma. Once an EFID district is formed, it allows for a reallocation of a portion of future property taxes, which, as I mentioned, is called a tax increment, to a separate account to be used to pay for infrastructure improvements that benefit the designated area. And when it gets created, which is that on that chart, the first left vertical bar, the baseline property value for all properties within the district would be frozen at that value. And then the incremental tax generated would be the captured appraised value in later years. So then a pre-designated percentage of this tax increment revenue could be established that would go into a fund that's administered by what's called a public financing authority to be used for public infrastructure and community benefiting projects. As I mentioned, if Cotati were to form something like an EIFD at some point in the future, the most likely partner would be the County of Sonoma. For two reasons. One is that educational institutions cannot participate in EFID, so that takes most of the property tax kind of off the table. And the only other major property tax recipient is the county. And they recently, earlier this year actually, created a policy around EFIDs so that it could facilitate these kind of conversations if cities or special districts want to entertain this type of financing mechanism. So that's why even though EFIDs were created by law in 2014, we haven't seen much conversation about it. The reason why we're talking about it now is earlier this year, the county created a policy. Because before that, if the cities or a special district approached the county it would just be, the conversation wouldn't go anywhere because there was no policy to discuss, and the county wouldn't have any, the county didn't have any policy direction on how to approach this type of thing. But now they do, so we're talking about it now. As I mentioned, if an EFID was formed, they would also have to form a public financing authority. And under statute, a majority of the members from the legislative body of the participating entities, it should consist of a majority of the members and a minimum of 2 members of the public chosen by those legislative bodies. So because boards are typically an odd number of seats, a PFA might consist of, for example, like 2 Cotati council members, 1 or 2 members from the County Board of Supervisors, and maybe 2 to 3 members of the public. So if you remember the old days redevelopment agencies, the successor agencies, or the redevelopment agencies in those cases, we're in a successor agency now, but the redevelopment agencies in those days were generally, almost always, the city councils. So they just wore a different hat when they made decisions for the redevelopment agency. One of the ways that the state legislature was trying to address some of the shortcomings of redevelopment agencies was not only, so back in the day, the redevelopment agencies could be formed by the cities, and they would basically do a sweeping capture of all the increment of all the taxes without other agencies volunteering to participate in that financing authority. So, so one way the state legislature was trying to address that was saying, you can do this tax increment type financing authority, but you have to get people to willingly join your authority. So that's why they'd have to voluntarily join and contribute some of their property tax. It wouldn't just be automatic as part of the formation of the district. The other thing that they did is, rather than the oversight or the governing board being just the council that forms it, it would have to be essentially a council of the agencies that are contributing tax money to the authority. So in this case, because the County of Sonoma would be the only viable entity, really, it would be, city council, it'd be a city council, members and county supervisors, and then some members of the public, as is in the staff report. And then, so once one of these things gets formed, initially what happens is there's not a whole lot of revenue that goes into them. They're formed, they're mechanically there, but there's not much increment. And if you just rely on the normal, escalation in property values as capped by Prop 13, so that's a maximum of 2% per year, you're not going to see much change in value, and therefore not much change in property tax. It's only when you get property sales, which you see some change, but really the big changes will happen when you see developments. Like when you see what was either underdeveloped or formerly vacant property get developed into something new, then you have a significant change in property tax value. So that's most likely when you'd see any significant revenue into something like this. And so in terms of creating public infrastructure, you wouldn't obviously, well, I wouldn't recommend getting into big infrastructure building program until you actually have revenue to, pay for that. Otherwise, you're basically just borrowing money from your other funds to do it if you did it early in the life of this. But once there's a significant amount of revenue coming into the district, then you could, in theory, either use that revenue directly, or you could bond out for the life of the district. That's another mechanism to sort of advance future funds. And EFIDs have a lifespan of 45 years after the first bond is issued. So, under state law, as I understand it, you can form an EFID and there's no life on it. But once you issue bonds, it puts a death date on your EFID. And the idea is that once the bonds are paid off, then the thing goes away and dissolves. And the project types, I won't go through them all, but they're in the staff report. And there's a variety of different project types, from your normal, what you would think of as normal public infrastructure type projects. Some things that are a little different that maybe you might not think of when you first think of this is things like, internet access services, affordable housing, and then the whole suite of public projects of all types. Brownfield restoration, environmental mitigation, improvements related to fighting climate change, which is a little different. So there's some things like that that are a little different than your normal vanilla public infrastructure projects, but generally speaking, it's public infrastructure. As far as the tax increments, the city gets about 10% of our 1% ad valorem tax, which is, if anyone's wondering, it's Latin for according to value. It's basically the value-based tax on the property. And so the city doesn't actually get a lot of property tax. We get, there's an example in the staff report, but basically if the taxable value is 500,000, the 1% ad valorem tax would mean that that property owner pays $5,000 annually in tax, which means that our 10% of that would be $500 per year. So it's relatively small. And as I mentioned, the main property tax recipients are the school district and the County of Sonoma. And the County of Sonoma would be obviously the one that we would partner with if we were to do something like this. And they get about 20% of the property tax as opposed to our 10%. There is an apportionment graph in the back of the staff report if anyone's curious what the various taxing entities get from property tax. And so the primary benefit of something like an EFID is that the city could use a portion of the county's property tax. I mean, this gets to the punchline. Like, why even do something like this? So it would make no sense to do it by ourselves because we already have that property tax, and there's no reason to tie up part of our own property tax to bond against it when we could already do that already, So the primary benefit of something like an EFID is if you get another agency, like in this case, the county, to partner with you, then they could also be contributing some of their property tax increment to the projects for a common benefit. And the reason why like an entity like the county would be interested is you might have an underdeveloped area, a lot of vacant property or underdeveloped property. It's not generating much property tax for anybody, including the County of Sonoma. And if you can locally do something that improves the area, a community project that improves the area, it basically, it raises all boats, right? So if the property tax, the value of the properties improve, which therefore improves the property tax, then everybody's valuation improves, including the county that would be participating. And for the city, of course, the additional benefit is that it could generate economic activity, which could generate other types of, revenue. Just speaking strictly from a revenue perspective, right? So you could get additional sales tax. You might get, if there's a hotel or something, you could get TOT. There's things like that that could be attractive as other revenue streams. But then there's obviously just meeting the policy goals of the city, which is non-revenue. But whether it's building housing, getting affordable housing built, or other goals that the community wants to achieve. The main drawback, for the city is that it would lock up part of the property tax, so that we don't have a lot of property tax, but it would lock up a portion of the property tax increment. So if we say that 30% of the future growth of the property tax is put into this infrastructure district, then that means 30% is dedicated to that thing and no longer available for general governmental purposes. But, if it's a project that catalyzes growth that wouldn't occur anyway, then, are you really losing much? So that's the type of thing that would be important to, look at in an evaluation like this. And then the main cost of establishing the EFID are the staff costs for the Public Financing Authority, once that would be up and running, as well as, the initial studies and so forth to kind of get it off the ground, forming a Public Financing Authority and running that, the cost of bonding if that happens at some point down the road. The initial, just so the council has a general idea of the order of magnitude of cost, initial study to look at the viability of something like this would be about $30,000. If we went through the full process of actually forming an EFID, the total cost, including that, would be about $120,000 or so. And then the ongoing staff to manage. The EFID could pay for all those costs, but depending on the timing of development and the formation of something like this, you could have a period of time where you have some, years where you're not collecting revenue, but you're expensing, you're incurring costs. So even though that's all reimbursable, it could be a bit of a loan in the upfront part of the life of an EFID. Also in the packet, I did include just some other materials that you might find interesting or informative. The city of Santa Rosa is fairly far down the road on this with the county of Sonoma, and so I included some of the materials from that county board meeting in the packet. And you can see the, some of the documents that they're discussing. And basically, I think the most relevant one is the city of Santa Rosa is proposing a variety of kind of projects. They originally were proposing a 50-50 split of tax increment with the county. And the county has said to Santa Rosa that, we wouldn't participate at that level. We'd participate more in the 25 to 30% level. So I would expect if we were to go down this road at some point in the future, that's probably what the county would say to us as well. If you read if you read the materials, there's also in addition to the county policy, where the county policy says that they're not going to contribute more money than the city contributes, or more percent than the city contributes. They also want to make sure that it has a net positive on property tax for the county, even during the life of the EFID. And it also meets certain goals. The county has certain goals that they want to meet. And then there was one other thing I was going to mention too, but the county also separately has, not in that policy, but in a separate policy, the county has a policy to take like 40% of future property tax growth and put it into an infrastructure fund that they're trying to build for maintaining city or county facilities. So all that is on the county side, those are all considerations that they're looking at. And so those are all reasons why they went back when they responded to the city of Santa Rosa. They said we'd be looking at 25 to 30% as a more realistic contribution to something like this. The city of Sebastopol has also been exploring this, just so you know. And the county or the city of Sonoma is just starting to look into this. So that's what's happening countywide in terms of other cities. And I think that is it. The recommendation, just to get back to the start, the recommendation is just to discuss EFIDs and, answer any questions if I can tonight, or take down questions if I can't. And direct staff to return with a proposal for initial viability study during strategic planning. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have questions? Yes, Kat.
So Damien, you mentioned that schools can't participate, but what about special districts?
Special districts can participate. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The only special district with a similar amount of property tax is us, if I'm going from memory here, is Rancho Adobe.
Right.
And they certainly could be approached to see if they'd want to participate, but they don't have a policy, so I don't know.
Okay.
I just don't know. The county there's a clearer path there. Not to say that we wouldn't approach the fire district also.
So they could come, if we kind of start going down this path, they could come back and say, we want to join too, or?
They could, yeah. They could.
Okay.
Yeah, we would have to put together a compelling case for how it improves their property tax value, for that to be attractive to them.
Okay, thank you.
All right, other questions? Yes.
So a few technical questions. So increment in property tax due to a revaluation on a sale, that still goes to the district, like the baseline stays at what it was? And same at redevelopment, the baseline stays, and so the massive increase in property tax at that point all goes to the EIFD.
That was
I
my
mean,
understanding. Yeah.
is subject to allocation. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Unless you have a caveat on that, but that's my understanding.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
I would just say that the example we looked at with Santa Rosa, I think the Sonoma County was saying 25 to 30%.
Well, that's a different question. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it doesn't all go.
I know, that's
Yeah,
why I
okay.
said subject to allocation, not all goes to EIFT. But I just mean it all goes in that triangle part of his chart, not in the, like the baseline doesn't bump up, which is what I would expect, that the baseline, like Prop 13 resets the value, right? But anyway, so my other question then was, oh, sorry, is there another answer?
No, we were just discussing your question, but
yeah,
the answer is the same.
Yeah. Okay. And then the other question was, is there a particular geographic area in the city you've talked about as being the EIFD geography?
Well, I think the most likely areas would be the priority development areas that have already been established. So geographically, that means the Highway 116 corridor, downtown, the downtown plan area, and then the train station area.
Uh-huh. And so it's only property taxes generated within that area that are part of this.
Yeah, I mean, both, and that's correct. That's correct. It's where, whatever the district boundaries are, but if the district boundaries are coterminous with those PDA areas, and that's what would happen. And I'm just initially thinking that would be the most attractive areas, both because that has the most redevelopment potential and infrastructure projects, but also because I think it would be the most compelling case to the county, where there's a lot of undervalued properties there that if they had a nudge, they could improve substantially for everybody.
Right. Okay. And then one other question about how they work is, do the projects have to be restricted to the EIFD boundaries?
They don't, but they have to benefit the EFID district.
Okay.
So I think in most cases, the projects are inside the district, but if you have something that's outside the district, you should just have a really clear case nexus to why it benefits the district. So a common example might be a roadway, like a roadway leading into the district or something like that.
Okay. And a final question is, what we're being asked to consider is providing direction to return with a proposal for a viability study at strategic planning. So how much staff time would be involved in preparing for strategic planning? Like if we say yes, come back, how much staff time are we talking?
It would be fairly minimal, because it would really just be talking to consultants and getting some proposals.
So like a couple hours of your time, maybe?
A couple hours, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions?
No, I mean, I just had some basic questions about if we were not to use an EIFD and getting those property taxes, the difference, would there be a difference just being able to do projects in those specific areas, using that ahead of time?
If we didn't do an EFID, you mean? Then we would just be we'd be working purely with the resources that we have available to us now.
Okay.
Right? The potential benefit of EFID is then you'll have another agency contributing basically some of their taxing. Well, not basically, they would be contributing part of their tax increment.
Additional.
So it'd be like additional money coming into the city to catalyze these projects. Yeah.
Okay. And then the other thing you had brought up was about the cost of running that versus the potential revenue. I know it's over 45 years once, so does that pretty much outweigh?
Yeah. So all the costs of running it are by statute reimbursable by the district, provided it's a district purpose. But, depending on, so once the district is formed, depending on how fast the initial development occurs, that increases the property value. You could have a period of time, and it could be relatively short, or it could be years if you don't have development for a long time, where you have a district formed that's you wouldn't have bonding or any of those kind of costs, but you'd have just basic maintenance and administration, running the board meetings, that kind of thing. That would be funded by the city through a reimbursable type arrangement. So you could have a period of time where you're subsidizing the district in the early years until enough revenue comes in to fully cover the cost of running it.
Okay.
So that is an early in the life of an EFID
Okay.
potential challenge and timing question as to when you'd actually want to pull the trigger on the formation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question. It seemed to me like this really makes sense in situations where there's some clearly identifiable roadblock. Yeah, like something that's holding up development. And you can see like because of the upfront costs and the administration costs, you need to see a pretty substantial increase in property tax in order to recoup that cost because it's just the future increment. So do we have in mind like some real specific roadblocks that this could help us with, that we would feel very confident that it would, if we just fix this, then the property values would go away? Like, because that's the only way that this would make sense to me, is if we really know what we're trying to fix with this district. You know, do you have some specifics in mind?
Yeah, as opposed to other tools like impact fees, that kind of thing, right? Because we do collect impact fees from development, but that's more of a after development type project fund. So, some things that jumped out are in our downtown area, we have a sewer trunk main that needs to be redone. Or extended, actually. We have Highway 116, which is an obvious one out there. And then there is the possibility of affordable housing projects maybe, but I think those are things that we would have to look at the viability, like how much money would this thing even create? Would it even be worth the conversation to go further, even go past that initial viability step? But those are just some things that stand out as potentially obvious, type projects.
Just kind of, some of them seem this is a 45-year district and you might not be able to reasonably bond against it until you've got a little bit of revenue coming. So things like 116, I'm hoping we are going to get working on sooner than this district might realistically be able to help us with. So
yeah, so it's within the districts. But the district is over a larger area, like the different PDA areas. It doesn't mean that the 116 projects have to go to start collecting revenue. It could be a different part of the district that's generating some initial increment.
sure, I'm just saying like
Yeah.
the timeline still might
yeah.
be so slow that
Sure.
it's not helpful in the time we need it. Yeah.
But just a follow-up question about potential benefits. So the baseline property tax value gets established when the EIFT is created, right? So even if the development we see coming is not going to be enabled by the existence of the EIFT, we still want the EIFT in place before the development happens. So say Santera Way has massive development happening. If we get baseline property tax revenues set prior to that development going in, then down the road, all that increment, and if we can get the county to commit 30% of their increment, then that's a potential future revenue source for us. So it's not necessarily about spurring those projects at the beginning, but that would then hopefully be a future source to spur future needs, something like that. Am I getting that about right? That's kind of how I'm understanding it.
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, if the time, and that's a timing question, right? If you see a lot of like a large scale development happening, for example, I guess Santera's, that's a good example because we're, that specific plan, EIR, and the plan itself are out right now for public comment. We're going to be bringing that back in January. And then, there have been developers that have expressed interest out there. So, if that area goes, then it could generate some revenue, some tax increment early in the life of the EFID that could be used for bonding or whatever in other parts of the EFID.
Is it the case that we have to be able to make the argument to the county that doing this is actually going to increase their revenue as well? So we have to have some compelling reason that we're doing it. Your question?
Follow on to that. I mean, it seems like the best way for this to financially get a lot of money in there is to get in on undeveloped property so that that baseline is a lot lower. And so then when it's developed, you get that bigger jump, and then we're getting a portion of money on that jump from the county participation. And that kind of seems a little appealing from an affordable housing perspective, because that's kind of, we've been struggling with policies, but what has really built some of our affordable housing is really when we've purchased land and then been able to work with developers, because it's kind of that participation that seems to kind of spur that for whatever reason. So, but in order for it to get enough money in there, you really have to get in on some of these ones that aren't developed, get them developed, and then you kind of can start filling that bucket up. Otherwise, it will take a long time to fill the bucket.
Yeah, I'll also add too, and this is just my initial impression, is that for those, if you remember what redevelopment was, so when the city created a redevelopment agency, they created the boundaries basically on the city limit lines. So it was basically the entire city. Why I don't think that would be viable in this case is because I don't think there's a lot of value out there, but I also don't think the county would also participate in something that just blankets a bunch of existing areas, because I don't think they're going to want to give away tax increment in areas that are already developed. They're going to want to see an area that's undervalued right now that they could see some potential growth in from a county fiscal perspective, where they could see, a big upside for them too, so a benefit for them as well. So that's, my initial take is that's our PDA areas. That would be the most attractive to them.
And Damien, might we see some more activity or discussions or whatever out there in the area on 116? Because a lot of that property out there is not developed, and the county has not done a great job of taking care of the infrastructure out there. Might that at some point tip those scales to kind of annex some some so it would be developed?
Well, so I guess, related to 116, there could be, we've been talking about the Alder to Redwood Drive developments, the ones that have been entitled. But that's what we're talking about right now in terms of like annexation and other areas. I don't know it's directly related, but,
Because there's pockets out there that they own that are kind of a mess for us.
Yeah.
And they don't do a very good job of keeping things up.
I'd say they're related in the sense that once development gets going out there, there might be more interest in some of those parcels behind Lowe's.
Right.
That might initiate that conversation. But I don't know about the EFID formation, but, the development generally.
And if something like that were to happen, and is it possible to increase the boundaries on the EFID, or do we have to, start all over?
Oh,
I think that Sebastopol was looking into doing an EIFD that had a portion of it in Sebastopol city limits and a portion in county land.
Oh, okay.
But part of the issue with that is then you're forming this district and it's taking up the city property tax increment.
Yeah.
And then that can be spent on county land.
Right.
And it's all in control of the EIFD board.
Board, yeah.
Right. So it's kind of a trade-off. Like, do you want to include
Yeah.
county land in the district or not? Something to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the Sebastopol EFID, I know the supervisor in that district is very involved in that one. And there's some specific goals. I think maybe you heard the report, Mayor, and I missed that one, but there's some specific goals I think the supervisor is trying to achieve in the county area outside of Sebastopol. Yeah.
I don't know all the details. I just knew there was some issue with the, part of it being outside. But I think you have to establish the boundaries right at the beginning. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I'm sorry, to your question, once you establish it, that's the boundary, unless you establish another EFID. But that, I'm not even sure what that would look like, and have two public finance authorities on. I don't know. You get kind of weird quickly.
Could have your meetings back to back. Okay, any other questions before we open it up to public comment? All right, why don't we go to Zoom first this time?
Thank you, Mayor Sparks. Once again, speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment. Lori, you have the floor.
I've been waiting. I'm on this one. I had never heard of these until this last agenda packet came out. And so I contacted a bunch of people in my state contacts, and they all agree that this is a way for cities to take out bonds without voter approval, having to go to the voter, and it's done in desperation. I want to know if you're going to deal with the debt service being so high. It's almost at 2 million per year. And add more onto our children's and our grandchildren's debt. I'm going to read what I heard from the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association. John Kupel, the president, wrote me back and he said, enhanced infrastructure financing districts were created as a replacement for redevelopment agencies. The whole purpose is to avoid voter approval. We can easily see the result by looking at the horrific financial footing of cities like Cotati. That's after I sent him some graphics in my comment. You've maxed out sales tax. You maxed out you bonds. You don't. The 2022, you put up the streets and the public buildings. It's obvious you are in a desperate situation if you have to find this route to go for more bonds because you don't even have collateral. And we're not stupid out here. You guys just don't you start with these conversations about this, and then a year later, it's all in place. You've been working on it the whole time and no public input. And that's what this is, to keep it out. If it goes through, it'll be agenda item. You won't put it in front of the voters because it wouldn't pass.
30 seconds.
If they got used to, if they saw all the data and knew how much debt service the city is in. And lastly, 2004, the redevelopment bonds for the police station and the Cotati room had balloon payments, and they're hitting now for the last 10 years. And if that's, we shouldn't be doing that to refinance them. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comment.
There are no further hands on Zoom. Mayor Sparks, that will end public comment on Zoom. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will open it up to public comment in the chambers. Is there anyone wishing to make a comment on this item? All right, that will end public comment, and I will bring it back to the council for any further discussion. Thoughts? Do we want to just move? Do we want to move forward, I guess, is the question, and continue to investigate this or not?
Yeah, I'd be comfortable with the level of, a couple of hours to gather some more information as a conversation in our strategic planning process early in the next year would be fine with me. Because it wasn't in this year's budget to spend a lot of staff time on it, I'm reluctant to give it a bigger green light without a discussion of, I'm channeling Councilmember Harvey here, what we'd be losing by devoting more staff time to it than that. Yeah.
Yeah. Other thoughts? Yep. Agreed. I tend to feel the same way. I think just continuing to look into it a little bit and bring back a proposal at strategic planning would be fine with me. Yeah. Okay. Do you feel like you have your direction? Any more information you need from us? Okay. Well, I don't think we need a vote on that one, do we?
No, it's just providing direction.
Giving you
Yeah.
direction. Okay. So that brings us to item 12, which is the city manager's report.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, and members of the council. So just a reminder, the holiday toy drive is just around the corner. So this is, a joint project between the city and police department and Rancho Adobe and the Rotary Club. And it starts December 1st and goes through Christmas. The police department will be accepting new toys through that entire time. And they can be dropped off at the police station or the Rancho Adobe Firehouse downtown. Gift cards for children 10 years and older are also being requested. And though they should be dropped off, if you come into the police department, drop them off with the dispatch. In other words, don't throw them in the big pile of presents. They might get lost in there. So hand them to the dispatcher, please. And then for projects, we have a couple projects that are in construction right now, the Putnam Park project and also the sidewalk gap closure project. But both of those are on hold for, I think, because of the rain, obvious reasons, right? So that's on hold at the moment, but those are the two under construction projects at the moment. Just mentioning that we got some refreshed holiday banners that are up on the streetlight poles downtown along Old Redwood Highway. So it's new if you notice that. Good news again with the Administrative Services Department. They also, I wish I wrote down the number of years straight now, but they won the budget award again for the 23-24 fiscal year budget. So congratulations to Angela, who is at Disneyland, literally. As soon as she got the award, she ran out and went to Disneyland. So, but her and her team. So that's anyway, multiple years of winning that award, which is great for the city, and great. The department's been doing such great work for so many years now. So, a reminder that the Santero Waste Specific Plan Draft EIR is out. That closes. Comments are due by December 16th. So that closes soon. We recently had the second neighborhood meeting. I think it was the second neighborhood meeting for 120 East Cotati Avenue. This is the affordable housing project in the corner of Charles and East Cotati. So conceptual architectural designs were shared, and the public there were asked about what their preferences were and to provide input on the concept designs before it comes to City Council on December 10th to look at the conceptual designs. And so the council will very shortly get a full update on that project, but it's moving along. Just a reminder again, too, that very soon, Keeping People Housed rental assistance will be available. It's a new program for the county that provides free financial assistance and legal support to eligible households. And this is for help with rent, utilities, eviction notices, or other emergency needs. Information is kept confidential. Interested households can apply at keeppeoplehoused.org or contacting COTS, which is the Committee on the Shelterless in Petaluma. And the funding is anticipated to begin being distributed or getting dispersed in mid-December. So that's also coming up soon. This week is our Thanksgiving break camp for Camp Cotati. We have 15 campers this week, spending the days doing crafts and playing games, doing cooking projects. And we have another camp for 2 weeks during the winter break if you or your children need camp while they're away from school. This coming Saturday and Sunday, this November 30th and December 1st, will be our free compost giveaway at the ranch from 10 a.m. to noon each day. All are welcome to come and grab a truckload of compost or a pocket full of compost or whatever, a bag full of backpack full of compost, whatever you guys want to get. And that's a partnership with Zero Waste Sonoma, I should say, in case anybody doesn't know. Next Friday, December 6th, will be our annual holiday tree lighting event in La Plaza Park from 4 to 8 p.m. And it'll be all the normal great stuff that we all love to do. The horse and trolley rides, live music and entertainment, vendors selling gifts and food, free coffee, hot cocoa, cookies, crafts, all that stuff. And of course, Santa will be there. And then the The next day is the Cotati Shop and Stroll Holiday event in downtown Cotati from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. And we have a bunch of vendors and live music and more. I think Santa will be there also. He spends a lot of time in Cotati before the holidays. And then on December 7th, we're having a volunteer day at Veranda Fletty Ranch from 10 to noon to prepare the garden for the winter season. So all ages are welcome and no experience is necessary. We do encourage registration just so that we know how many people are coming, but walk-ins are also welcome. And then the following weekend, we host our sold-out Breakfast with Santa event, which will be a sure hit, like it always is. It's always very busy. And that's in the morning. So later in the afternoon, we have holiday crafting and treat decoration at the ranch. So after hanging out with Santa and doing breakfast, overloading on breakfast, you can kind of stagger across the street and go to the ranch. And then they're going to have ornament making and decorating of baked goods that Lady Bloom Bakery, or the new downtown bakery, is providing for that event. So it's going to be $15 for anyone over 3 and over, 3 to 6 p.m. at the ranch. So that's happening the same day. And then finally on December 21st, we have our drop and shop event, where this is like for the people that procrastinate and you need to shop right before Christmas. You can drop your children at a one-day camp while you run errands or do some last-minute shopping. That's from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And there's lots of games, crafts, lunch, movie, so forth for kids. And that's about it. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Any questions? All right, let's open.
Wait,
Yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
one quick one. For things like the Keep People Housed funding, how do we let residents know who are in need? Do we have a flyer rack? Do people call City Hall? Do people know what to tell them and where to send them? Things like that?
Yeah, internally we know. I believe it went out in this last newsletter. Yeah, it did. Yeah, I believe it went out in the last newsletter. It's going to be mailed to all the households in Cotati with instructions on how to contact Keep People Housed. So they should see that early December before the funding becomes available.
And if somebody just calls the generic call City of Cotati number, whoever answers will kind of know how to deal with those sorts of requests and things like that?
The main lines, yeah. So we have a couple of just main lines.
Sure.
So yeah, we'll make sure that they all are aware of it so they can direct people to the right
Yeah, it'd be great.
resources.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
On the same topic, have we shared that on social media so that people can see the information and know where to go?
Yes.
We have.
Yes, we
Okay.
can, yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you.
I mean, we will.
Okay, we will. Okay, thank you.
Right, other questions? Okay, so I'll open it up for city council member reports. Does anyone have a report to share?
Sure. Let me see, November 13th, I was at Sonoma Speedway Children's Charity. It was a grant approval meeting. We gave 300,000 plus for countywide youth programs. November 14th was a mayor and council members meeting in Sebastopol. There was a Measure O presentation and discussion by the County of Sonoma Health Department. And there was an update on ballot local races and a request for future agenda items for the Mayors and Council Members Association. So we all submitted different items. November 18th, I met with Cotati constituents to visit the Highway 116 redesign site. We discussed pedestrian islands and walked West Cotati and saw some of the new walkways that are being developed there. On November 19th, I helped with applicant interviews for the Police Advisory Committee. And November 21st, met with consultants online for City Council priority setting for strategic planning. And then I want to also share that the Cotati Chamber Crawl change has a new date. So it's now December 17th instead of December 12th. So December 17th at 5:30, it starts over at the flagship tap room. And I did meet today on community with Herman J. Hernandez of Locien in Santa Rosa. We just met about community this morning. So that's my report for today.
Great, thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Just one minor report, and that's the Zero Waste Sonoma meeting on November 21st. And a couple things of note. First of all, we considered and signed an agreement for engineering design for the household hazardous waste facility. So it's starting to move. So that's a good thing. And I get to be on the subcommittee that works on that. So that's kind of exciting though. So I'll know more about that. They're trying to set up a meeting. The second thing of importance to everyone is we had a presentation on the landfill. And that was really pretty interesting. I think the most important thing for y'all to know is that the landfill site life, we're looking at probably somewhere between 15 and 17 years left, which may not sound like a lot, but in 2009, when I started on the solid waste advisory group and kind of went through all of that, we only had 19 years left. So the fact that since 2009 to now, we're only down to somewhere between 15 and 17 really says that people are doing a really good job of recycling things. They actually broke ground on a new cell, and they showed pictures of them blasting because they had to blast to get that, but they are working on a new cell for that. So that was pretty exciting. And they've also been trying to beautify some of the transfer stations because I guess they'd gotten quite run down. So they have been doing a lot of painting and kind of making things look better. But that's all I have.
Great, thank you. Yes.
I was also at the mayor and council members board meeting that Councilmember Lemus mentioned. I also had my interview with the strategic planning consultants last week. And last week I was as our alternate on the SCTA RCPA board at that meeting. And I just wanted to mention the legislative update these days is kind of like nobody knows what's about to happen to all the federal funding. That's the scary thing right now on both transportation and climate, though lots of people have guesses. And then there was an update on active transportation plans, which of course is everybody's doing it except we're done. So that was, they're good at pointing that out. Cotati was ahead of the game and we're done and got theirs done. But there was also a report on this program called Mascots, Marin Sonoma Coordinated Transit Service Plan, which is kind of exciting. It's all of the transit operators in Sonoma and Marin County working together to try to coordinate route and schedules so that they actually make sense. Everybody acknowledges that it does not make sense right now to try to get around. SMART and Golden Gate Bus are completely duplicating each other's services and things like that. So that sounds like a kind of a hopeful plan to see a little bit of improvement to transit service. There was also a bit of an update on the next SCTA funding program that included a timeline that I sent on to staff. Thanks.
I also attended the mayors and council members board meeting. You guys have covered that already. I met with the strategic planning consultant as well. He pointed out to me, have you ever noticed that your downtown La Plaza area is sort of shaped like a peace sign? I said, yeah, I'd noticed that. Like a peace sign. Oh, okay, it's kind of fun. And then I attended a very informal meeting of some of the folks from the 2x2 Education Committee. It was just, the purpose of the meeting was to figure out when we were going to meet in the future and what we were going to do. So I think that they've set the meeting times are going to be the third Wednesday in of the month at 5 p.m. And the school district is tentatively going to take over the operation of that committee. And there was some discussion of having it meet quarterly, but it's sort of being reformed right now. So we haven't had an official meeting in quite a while. I'm hoping
Better than that at all, huh?
Yeah, so I'm hoping it'll start back up in March, possibly. That's really all I have to report. Anything else from anybody? Yeah, go ahead.
No, just a reminder, there's a Cal Cities webinar next week. If people want to sign up for that.
Okay.
On the 3rd, I believe it is.
Thank you. All right, so was there that takes us to public comment on non-action agenda items. Does anyone in the chambers have a desire to speak about any of these items that were not action items, you're welcome to come up now. Oh, can we open it to Zoom?
Once again, speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment. Mayor Sparks, that'll end public comment.
Was there any information received after the agenda was posted?
Yes, there was. There were several public comments received, mostly around item 9A. There was one or two for item 11B and a couple of citizens business comments as well. So all those are available in front of you, posted to the HTML agenda and available in print in the back of the chamber tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, we will adjourn the meeting.